Betrayal and capture. The crystalline spires of Lyrania Prime glittered in the light of the setting binary suns, their faceted surfaces refracting shades of amber and azure across the bustling cityscape. Zira Ven, senior diplomat of the Lyranian Confederation, stood at the window of her high-rise apartment, her iridescent scales shifting from deep indigo to a somber blue as she contemplated the datapad in her hand. The information displayed before her was damning, irrefutable evidence of high-level corruption within the Lyranian government. Members of the Inner Council, including some she had considered allies, were implicated in a vast network of illegal activities. Worst of all, the documents suggested links to the notorious Grask Syndicate, a criminal organization known for its involvement in the galactic slave trade. Zora's 4 hearts raced as she considered her next move. As a diplomat, she had sworn to uphold the principles of justice and equality that the Lyranian Confederation claimed to embody. But this conspiracy reached the highest echelons of power. Who could she trust? A chime from her communication console interrupted her thoughts. Diplomat Ven, a familiar voice called out, "Your presence is requested at an emergency session of the Inner Council." Zora's scales rippled with unease. "Understood," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I'll be there shortly." As she made her way to the council chambers, Zora couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a trap. The streets of the capital were unusually quiet, the normal bustle of evening activity subdued. Even the ever-present swarms of luminescent insects that usually danced between the crystal towers seemed scarce. The council building loomed before her, its ancient architecture a stark contrast to the sleek modernity of the surrounding city. Zora passed through the security checkpoints, noting the increased presence of armed guards. Their eyes followed her movements, and she felt a chill run down her spine. The main chamber was dimly lit when Zora entered, the semicircular array of seats occupied by shadowy figures. At the center stood High Counselor Draz, his scales a deep, authoritative green. "Ah, Diplomat Ven," Draz's voice boomed across the chamber. "Thank you for joining us at this late hour." Zora inclined her head in a gesture of respect, even as her instincts screamed at her to flee. "High Counselor, esteemed members of the Inner Council, what is the nature of this emergency?" Draz's expression hardened. "The emergency, Diplomat Ven, is you." Before Zora could react, strong hands gripped her arms from behind. She struggled, but the guards' grips were like iron. "We know you've accessed classified files," Draz continued, his voice cold. "Files that could destabilize our entire government if made public." Zora's mind raced. How had they discovered her investigation so quickly? "High Counselor, if you'll allow me to explain." "There's nothing to explain," Draz cut her off. "You've committed treason against the Lyranian Confederation. The penalty for such a crime is clear." Zora's heart sank as she realized the depth of the corruption she faced. These weren't misguided officials who could be reasoned with. They were active participants in a criminal conspiracy that spanned the galaxy. "You won't get away with this," Zora hissed, her scales flushing an angry red. "The truth will come out." Draz laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Oh, my dear Zora, who do you think will believe you?" "A disgraced diplomat, convicted of treason." He gestured to the guards. "Take her away." "Ah, associates will ensure she's never heard from again." As Zora was dragged from the chamber, her mind whirled with the implications. The associates, Draz mentioned, could only be the Grask Syndicate. She was being sold into slavery by the very government she had served faithfully for years. The next few hours passed in a blur of fear and desperation. Zora was transported to a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city, where she was unceremoniously handed over to a group of hulking aliens she recognized as Grask enforcers. Their gray, leathery skin and multiple arms marked them as members of a species known for their physical prowess and cruel efficiency. "This one's a real prize," one of the Grask chuckled, running a clawed hand along Zora's scales. She recoiled in disgust. "Lyranian diplomat. The boss will be pleased." Zura was herded onto a waiting shuttle along with a dozen other captives of various species. As the craft lifted off, she caught a final glimpse of the glittering spires of Lyrania Prime through a viewport. The sight that had once filled her with pride now left a bitter taste in her mouth. The shuttle docked with a massive starship in high orbit. Zira and her fellow captors were marched through cold, metallic corridors to a large holding area. Force fields crackled to life, separating them into individual cells. An imposing Grask, clearly the captain of the vessel, strode into the room. His cybernetic enhancements glinted in the harsh lighting as he surveyed the new arrivals. "Welcome aboard the Nightshade," he growled, his voice a rumble that Zira felt in her bones. "You are now property of the Grask Syndicate. Cooperate, and your new lives might even be tolerable. Resist." His cybernetic eye glowed an ominous red. "Well, let's just say there's always a market for spare parts." As the captain's laughter echoed through the hold, Zira slumped against the wall of her cell. She had spent her life working to build a more just galaxy, and now she was nothing more than a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. But as the Nightshade's engines hummed to life, carrying them deeper into the void of space, a small spark of defiance flickered in Zira's heart. She might have lost everything, but she refused to lose hope. Somehow, someway, she would find a way to escape and expose the truth, not just for herself, but for all those who suffered under the grip of corruption and slavery across the galaxy. Little did Zira know that her fate was about to become entangled with that of a lone human mercenary, a man whose arrival would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of galactic society. The Nightshade cruised through the inky void of space, its sleek hull designed to evade detection from both law enforcement and rival criminal organizations. In the cramped confines of her cell, Zira had lost all sense of time. Days, perhaps weeks, had passed since her capture on Lyrania Prime. Her once vibrant scales had dulled to a listless grey, a physical manifestation of her fading hope. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. The sound of heavy footfalls and shouted orders echoed down the corridors. Zira pressed herself against the force field, straining to catch a glimpse of what was happening. "We're under attack," a panicked voice cried out. "It's the Ghost." The name sent a ripple of excitement through the captives. Even Zira had heard whispers of the Ghost, a mysterious figure who had become a thorn in the side of slavers across the galaxy. Some said it was a highly advanced AI. Others claimed it was a rogue military unit. But all agreed on one thing: where the Ghost appeared, slaves found freedom. The Nightshade shuddered as it took a direct hit. The force fields flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, Zira thought they might fail completely. But the backup systems kicked in, keeping the prisoners contained. Through the chaos, a new sound reached Zira's ears, the distinctive whine of a boarding craft latching onto the Nightshade's hull. The grass guards rushed to repel the invaders, leaving the holding area unattended. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the sounds of battle raged through the ship. Weapon fire, shouts of pain and fury, and the occasional explosion created a terrifying symphony. Zira and her fellow captors could only wait, their fates hanging in the balance. Finally, the door to the holding area hissed open. Zira's heart raced as she prepared herself for whatever, or whoever, was about to enter. A figure strode into the room, clad in sleek, matte black armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. The helmet's opaque visor gave no hint of the face beneath, but the build was unmistakably human. In one hand, the figure held an advanced energy rifle, in the other, a datapad that was clearly of Grask design. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted sentients," a modulated voice emerged from the helmet as the figure approached the control panel. "Your ride is here. Please remain calm as I disengage the force fields." With a few deft movements, the mysterious rescuer deactivated the containment systems. As the force fields winked out of existence, the captives stumbled forward, many too weak or shocked to fully comprehend their sudden freedom. The armored figure, clearly the infamous Ghost, moved efficiently through the room, administering first aid where needed and guiding the freed prisoners towards the exit. When they reached Zira, they paused. Lyranian diplomat, the ghost mused, the voice synthesizer unable to fully mask the surprise in their tone. You're a long way from the crystal spires of Lyrania Prime. Zira straightened, summoning what dignity she could muster. I was betrayed, she said, her voice hoarse from disuse. By my own government. They sold me to the Grask to keep me from exposing their corruption. The ghost nodded. Sounds like we have a lot to talk about. But first, let's get you and the others out of here. As they made their way through the corridors of the Nightshade, Zira saw firsthand the efficiency with which the ghost had neutralized the Grask crew. Unconscious bodies littered the floor, taken down with precision strikes and non-lethal weaponry. You didn't kill them, Zira observed. I'm not in the business of making corpses, the ghost replied. Just freeing slaves and ruining slavers' days. It's much more satisfying to leave them alive to face justice, and to spread the word that crossing the ghost is a bad idea. They reached the airlock where the ghost's ship had docked. As the freed captives filed aboard, Zira hesitated. Why risk your life for us? She asked. What do you gain from this? The ghost turned to face her, and for a moment, Zira wished she could see the expression behind that inscrutable visor. Because it's the right thing to do, came the simple reply. And because every person I free is a blow against the corrupt systems that allow slavery to persist in our galaxy. With that, they boarded the ship. As the airlock sealed behind them, Zira felt the vibration of the engines coming to life. Through a viewport, she watched as they disengaged from the Nightshade, which now hung dead in space, its systems disabled by the ghost's attack. The interior of the ghost's ship was a stark contrast to the cold, utilitarian design of the Grask vessel. Despite being compact, it was well-equipped and surprisingly comfortable. Medical drones moved among the rescued captives, administering care and providing nutrient-rich meals to the malnourished prisoners. As the ship accelerated away from the Nightshade, the ghost removed their helmet, revealing a ruggedly handsome human male with piercing blue eyes and a shock of prematurely graying hair. Jack Harper, he introduced himself with a roguish grin. Welcome aboard the Artemis. Zira found herself momentarily at a loss for words. The legendary ghost, terror of slavers across the galaxy, was a human. The revelation challenged everything she thought she knew about the mysterious figure. Thank you, she finally managed, for saving us. But what happens now? Jack's expression turned serious. Now we get you all to safety. I have contacts on various worlds who can help you start new lives, free from the reach of the Grask and their allies. He paused, his gaze meeting Zira's. But first, I think you and I need to have a chat about this corruption in the Lyranian government. If what you say is true, it could be the key to bringing down a significant part of the slave trade network. Zira nodded, feeling a spark of hope ignite within her for the first time since her capture. I'll tell you everything I know. But Jack, they'll be looking for me. The Grask, the corrupt officials on Lyrania Prime, they can't afford to let me expose their operation. Jack's grin returned, a determined glint in his eye. Let them come. I've been a thorn in their side for years, and I'm not about to stop now. Together, we might just have a chance to make a real difference. As the Artemis streaked through hyperspace, carrying its passengers to safety, Zira felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had lost everything. Her position, her home, her trust in the government she had served faithfully. But in its place, she had found something unexpected, an ally in her fight for justice, and perhaps a new purpose. Little did Jack and Zira know that their chance encounter would set in motion a series of events that would shake the very foundations of galactic society, challenging the entrenched powers that profited from corruption and slavery. Their journey was just beginning, and the road ahead would be fraught with danger, betrayal, and the ultimate test of the human spirit. As the Artemis vanished into the depths of space, leaving the disabled Nightshade behind, a new chapter in the fight against galactic injustice had begun, and at its heart was an unlikely pair, a betrayed alien diplomat and a human mercenary with a conscience, united in their quest for freedom and justice in a universe that seemed all too willing to look the other way. The human liberator. The Artemis dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder, emerging in the shadow of a gas giant in an unremarkable star system. Jack Harper's fingers danced across the control panel, activating a series of stealth protocols that rendered the ship nearly invisible to long-range scanners. "Welcome to Sanctuary," Jack announced, gesturing to a small, rocky moon orbiting the gas giant. "It's not much to look at, but it's the safest place I know for people who need to disappear for a while." Zira peered out the viewport, her scales shifting to a curious blue-green. The moon's surface was pockmarked with craters and canyons, showing no signs of habitation. "It looks desolate," she observed. Jack's lips quirked into a smile. "Looks can be deceiving. The entire settlement is underground, state-of-the-art life support, hydroponics, and enough renewable energy to keep it running for centuries. It's a haven for refugees, escaped slaves, and anyone else who needs to lay low." As they approached the moon's surface, a hidden hangar bay opened like a yawning maw in the side of a crater. Jack piloted the Artemis inside with practiced ease, setting it down next to a motley collection of other spacecraft. The next few hours were a flurry of activity as Jack's contacts on Sanctuary helped process and care for the rescued captives. Zira assisted where she could, her diplomatic training proving useful in calming fears and mediating minor disputes among the diverse group of former slaves. Finally, with the last of the rescues settled, Jack led Zira to a private conference room deep within the underground complex. The room was Spartan but secure, its walls lined with signal jamming technology to prevent eavesdropping. "All right," Jack said, leaning back in his chair. "I think it's time you told me exactly what you discovered about the Lyranian government's involvement with the Grask Syndicate." Zara took a deep breath, her scales rippling with a mix of anger and determination. She recounted everything she had uncovered: the secret meetings, the laundered credits, the coordinated efforts to undermine anti-slavery legislation across multiple sectors. As she spoke, Jack's expression grew increasingly grim. When Zira finally finished, he let out a low whistle. "This goes deeper than I thought. We're not just talking about a few corrupt officials here. This is systemic." "Precisely," Zira nodded. "And it's not limited to Lyrania. There are connections to at least a dozen other governments and major corporations. The slave trade isn't just tolerated, it's actively supported by some of the most powerful entities in the galaxy." Jack stood, pacing the room as he processed the information. "This could be the break we've been waiting for. With this evidence, we could potentially bring down the entire network." Zura's scales flushed a cautionary yellow. "It won't be easy. These are powerful, ruthless individuals we're dealing with. They'll stop at nothing to protect their interests." As if on cue, an alarm blared through the complex. Jack's communicator crackled to life, a panicked voice cutting through the noise. "Ghost, we've got incoming. Multiple ships just dropped out of hyperspace and are headed straight for us." Jack swore under his breath, already moving towards the door. "They found us. Come on, we need to get back to the Artemis." As they raced through the corridors of Sanctuary, the complex shook with the impact of weapons fire. "How did they find us so quickly?" Zira shouted over the din. "I don't know," Jack replied grimly, "but I intend to find out." They burst into the hangar bay to find it in chaos. Refugees scrambled to board whatever ships were available as the ceiling groaned ominously from another impact. Jack and Zira sprinted up the Artemis boarding ramp. Inside, Jack's hands flew over the controls, bringing the ship's systems online. "Hang on," he warned as he fired up the engines. "This is going to be close." The Artemis shot out of the hangar bay just as a section of the roof collapsed behind them. Zira gasped as she saw the attacking force, a small fleet of Grask warships accompanied by several sleek vessels she recognized as belonging to the Lyranian military. "They're working together openly now," she said, her voice tight with disbelief and anger. Jack's jaw clenched as he maneuvered the Artemis through a hail of weapons fire. They must be desperate, or confident that no one will stop them. A warning light flashed on the console. "We've got a tail," Jack announced. "Lyranian interceptor. Fast little buggers." Zira studied the tactical display, her diplomatic mind racing to find a solution that didn't end with them becoming space debris. "The rings," she said suddenly, pointing to the gas giant they were rapidly approaching. "We can use them for cover." Jack grinned. "I like the way you think, diplomat." The Artemis plunged into the planet's ring system, a dense field of ice and rock fragments. Jack's piloting skills were put to the test as he wove through the debris, using the larger chunks as shields against their pursuers' weapons. Just when it seemed they might make it clear, a lucky shot from the Lyranian interceptor clipped their starboard engine. Alarms blared as the Artemis began to lose power. "We're not going to outrun them like this," Jack growled, his hands dancing over the controls as he tried to reroute power. Zira's mind raced, considering and discarding options. Then an idea struck her, risky, but potentially their only chance. "The moon," she said. "The one we just left. If we can get back there." Jack caught on immediately. "We might be able to lose them in the canyons. It's crazy, but it just might work." With their pursuers closing in, Jack pushed the damaged Artemis to its limits, limping back towards Sanctuary's moon. They skimmed the cratered surface, weaving through narrow canyons barely wider than the ship itself. The Lyranian interceptor followed, its pilot equally skilled but hampered by unfamiliarity with the terrain. As they rounded a particularly tight bend, Jack saw his opportunity. He cut the engines entirely, letting the Artemis drop into a deep crevice. For a heart-stopping moment, they were in free fall. Then Jack fired the maneuvering thrusters, bringing them to a hovering stop just below the lip of the canyon. Above them, the Lyranian ship screamed past, unable to match their sudden maneuver. Jack and Zira held their breath, waiting to see if their gambit had paid off. Long seconds ticked by, punctuated only by the faint beeping of the ship's damaged systems. Finally, Jack's sensors showed the Lyranian ship moving away, having lost their trail. He let out a long, shaky breath. That was too close. Zara nodded, her scales a mix of relieved blue and wary purple. "They'll be back, and in greater numbers next time." "You're right," Jack agreed, already plotting their next move. "We need to go on the offensive. No more running. It's time to take the fight to them." As the Artemis limped out of the canyon, its crew battered but unbroken, a new sense of purpose filled the air. They had survived the initial onslaught, but the real battle was just beginning. Jack turned to Zira, his eyes blazing with determination. "I hope you're ready for this," he said, "because from here on out, we're at war with some of the most powerful forces in the galaxy." Zira met his gaze, her own resolve matching his. "I've been ready since the moment they betrayed everything I believed in. Whatever comes next, we face it together." As the Artemis set course for their next destination, both human and Lyranian knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. But in each other, they had found not just an ally, but a kindred spirit in the fight for justice. The chase had only strengthened their resolve. Now it was time to turn the tables and become the hunters instead of the hunted. The fate of countless lives across the galaxy now rested in their hands. As they prepared for the battles to come, Jack and Zira silently vowed to see their mission through to the end, no matter the cost. The revolution against galactic slavery had begun, and at its heart stood an unlikely duo, a human liberator and an alien diplomat, united in their quest to bring freedom to the stars, escape and alliance. The Artemis drifted through the void of space, its systems running on minimal power to avoid detection. In the ship's small medical bay, Jack winced as Zira applied a regenerative gel to a nasty gash on his forearm, a souvenir from their narrow escape. "You know," Jack said, trying to lighten the mood, "when I pictured a beautiful alien tending to my wounds, this wasn't quite what I had in mind." Zora's scales flickered with amusement, a brief lavender hue before settling back to a pensive blue. "Careful, human. Flattery will get you everywhere with some species, but Lyrenians prefer direct honesty. Jack's roguish grin faded into a more serious expression. All right then. Honest truth. We're in deep trouble, Zira. The Artemis took a beating back there. We need repairs, supplies, and most importantly, a plan. Zira nodded, her 4 hearts heavy with the weight of their situation. I've been thinking about that. The data I stole, it's encrypted. I could only access parts of it before I was caught, but if we could decrypt the rest, we'd have the smoking gun we need to blow this whole conspiracy wide open. Jack's eyes lit up. But we'd need some serious computing power to crack that kind of encryption, and I'm guessing the kind of people who have that aren't exactly friends of ours. Zura's scales shifted to a determined green. Actually, I might know someone who could help. An old friend from my academy days. Last I heard, he was working as a data analyst on Nexus Station. Jack raised an eyebrow. Nexus Station. The neutral trading hub. That's risky. The place will be crawling with eyes and ears from every major power in the sector. Exactly, Zira replied. Hide a tree in a forest. The station's strict neutrality laws might be our best protection, and if anyone can decrypt this data, it's Krell. Jack mulled it over for a moment before nodding. All right. Nexus Station it is, but we'll need a disguise for you. A Lyranian diplomat is a bit too conspicuous right now. Hours later, the Artemis approached Nexus Station, a massive structure that hung in space like a glittering spider's web. Ships of all sizes and designs swarmed around it, a testament to its status as a crossroads of galactic commerce. Jack had worked his magic, using the Artemis fabricators to create a holographic disguise for Zira. To all outward appearances, she now looked like a Centaurian merchant, her Lyranian features hidden beneath an illusion of blue skin and 4 arms. As they docked, Jack turned to Zira. Remember, we're just a couple of down-on-their-luck traders looking for work. Keep your head down, and let's hope this Krell of yours comes through. They made their way through the bustling corridors of Nexus Station, a kaleidoscope of alien life forms and cultures swirling around them. Zura led them to a nondescript door in a quieter section of the station. She took a deep breath and knocked. The door slid open, revealing a rail-thin alien with elongated limbs and large, multifaceted eyes. Yes? What do you? Krell's words cut off as he peered more closely at Zira. Despite her disguise, recognition flashed in his compound eyes. By the cosmic egg, Zira, is that you? Zira quickly ushered Krell back into his quarters, Jack following close behind. Once the door was sealed, Zira deactivated her holographic disguise. Krell, I'm sorry to drop in like this, but we need your help. It's a matter of galactic importance. Over the next hour, Zira and Jack laid out the situation to an increasingly agitated Krell. When they finished, the data analyst's spindly limbs were trembling. This is bigger than anything I could have imagined, Krell said, his voice barely above a whisper. If what you're saying is true, it could destabilize half the governments in the sector. That's why we need to decrypt the rest of the data, Jack pressed. Can you do it? Krell's multifaceted eyes darted between them. Yes, I believe so, but it will take time. And if anyone discovers what we're doing, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Zura assured him. For now, just focus on the decryption. As Krell set to work, Jack and Zira took turns standing watch. Hours ticked by, the tension mounting with each passing minute. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Krell's console chimed. It's done, he announced, his voice a mix of triumph and trepidation. I've decrypted the files, but, oh, stars above. Jack and Zira crowded around the console, their eyes widening as they took in the information scrolling across the screen. It was worse than they had imagined. The conspiracy didn't just involve a few corrupt officials or even a single government. It was a vast, intricate web that spanned dozens of star systems, implicating corporations, crime syndicates, and even some ostensibly benevolent organizations. They're using the slave trade to manipulate entire economies. Zura breathed, her scales a sickly yellow with shock and disgust. Destabilizing some worlds, propping up others, all to maintain their power and wealth. Jack's fists clenched at his sides, and they're using people, sentient beings, as their pawns, destroying lives, tearing apart families, all for profit and control. Krell slumped in his chair. What can we possibly do against something this big? They'll crush us like insects if we try to expose this. But Jack's eyes had taken on a steely glint. No, they won't, because we're not going to fight them on our own. He turned to Zira. You said it yourself. This information could destabilize governments, but it could also unite people against a common enemy. Zira caught on, her scales shifting to a vibrant, determined purple. A galactic alliance, not of governments, but of people. Ordinary citizens, reformed criminals, resistance movements. Exactly, Jack nodded. We release this information, not all at once, but strategically. Build a network of allies, pool our resources, and bring the whole corrupt system crashing down. And bring freedom to every enslaved being in the galaxy. Zira finished, a fierce grin spreading across her face. Krell looked between them, his initial fear giving way to a tentative hope. It's insane, but it just might work. Count me in. As they began to formulate their plan, a proximity alarm suddenly blared from Krell's console. Jack rushed to the window, his face paling at what he saw. We've got company. Looks like a Grask assault team, and they're heading this way. Zora's heart raced as she reactivated her disguise. They must have tracked us somehow. We need to move. Now. As they rushed to gather the precious data and make their escape, one thing was clear. The real battle was just beginning. They had uncovered the truth, but staying alive long enough to use it would be their greatest challenge yet. With the sound of heavy footsteps approaching in the corridor, Jack, Zira, and their newfound ally Krell prepared to face whatever came next. The fate of countless lives across the galaxy now rested in their hands. As they worked, a sense of cautious hope filled the air. Against all odds, they had come this far. Now it was time to finish what they had started and bring justice to a galaxy that had for too long turned a blind eye to suffering. The revolution was about to begin, and at its heart stood an unlikely trio, a human liberator, an alien diplomat, and a brilliant data analyst, united in their quest to shatter the chains of galactic slavery and forge a new era of freedom among the stars. Uncovering the conspiracy, the corridor outside Krell's quarters echoed with the heavy footfalls of the approaching Grask assault team. Jack's mind raced, assessing their limited options for escape. The ventilation system, Krell whispered urgently, pointing to a panel near the ceiling. It connects to the maintenance tunnels. We might be able to lose them in there. Without hesitation, Jack boosted Zira up to the vent. Her Lyranian agility allowed her to quickly remove the panel and slip inside. Krell followed, his spindly form easily maneuvering into the narrow space. Jack was last, barely squeezing through as the door to Krell's quarters burst open. They crawled through the dusty confines of the ventilation system, the sounds of the grass tearing apart Krell's living space fading behind them. After what felt like hours of navigating the labyrinthine tunnels, they emerged in a dimly lit maintenance bay. We need to get off this station, Jack said, his voice low. But they'll be watching the docks. Zora's scales shimmered with concentration. What about the cargo bays? If we could stow away on an outbound freighter? Krell nodded enthusiastically. Yes, I know the shipping schedules. There's a Rillian trader departing for the outer rim in less than an hour. As they made their way through the station's less trafficked areas, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His instincts proved correct when they rounded a corner and came face to face with a Nexus station security team. Halt, the lead officer commanded, weapon raised. By order of station management, you're all under arrest. Jack tensed, ready to fight, but Zira stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. Officer, I understand you're doing your job, But I implore you to hear us out. The safety of the entire galaxy may depend on it." Something in Zira's tone gave the security team pause. The lead officer hesitated, then lowered his weapon slightly. "You have 1 minute. Make it count." In a rushed but compelling narrative, Zira laid out the broad strokes of the conspiracy they had uncovered. As she spoke, the expressions of the security team shifted from skepticism to shock, and then to anger. The lead officer holstered his weapon entirely. "If what you're saying is true, my own brother was taken by slavers 3 years ago. We never found him." Jack saw an opportunity. "Then help us. We have the evidence to bring down this entire network, but we need to get off this station first." After a tense moment of deliberation, the officer nodded. "All right, we'll get you to that Rillian freighter. But you have to promise me one thing. When you bring these bastards down, make them pay for every life they've ruined." With the unexpected aid of the Nexus Station security team, Jack, Zira, and Krell managed to sneak aboard the Rillian freighter just before it departed. As the massive ship pulled away from the station, they breathed a collective sigh of relief. "That was too close," Krell said, his multifaceted eyes darting nervously around their hiding spot in the cargo hold. "But it proved something important," Zira replied, her scales a thoughtful blue. "There are people out there in positions of authority who will stand with us if they know the truth." Jack nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "Then that's how we start building our alliance. We find those who have been hurt by this conspiracy, those in positions to help, and we bring them into the fold." Over the next several weeks, as they jumped from system to system aboard various smuggled transports, Jack, Zira, and Krell began to assemble their coalition. Each new ally brought their own skills, resources, and connections to the cause. The Arachne Hacker Collective, experts in penetrating the most secure networks, joined after learning how the slave trade had destabilized their home world. A disgraced Terran general, who had been framed when she got too close to uncovering the truth, brought her tactical expertise and remaining military contacts. A Novan empath, whose species had been particularly targeted by slavers, offered her abilities to detect deception and read the emotions of potential allies. With each new addition to their ranks, the movement grew stronger. They established secure communication channels, safe houses across multiple systems, and began to strategically release portions of the decrypted data to key individuals and media outlets. The response was immediate and explosive. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds as citizens learned of their government's complicity in the slave trade. Corporate stock prices plummeted as shareholders demanded answers. The carefully constructed web of lies and manipulation began to unravel. But their success did not go unnoticed. The corrupt officials and crime lords who had profited from the slave trade for so long were not about to give up without a fight. Assassination attempts, smear campaigns, and increasingly desperate acts of violence plagued the fledgling alliance. During a clandestine meeting on a remote jungle world, Jack, Zira, and their core team gathered to discuss their next move. "We've made incredible progress," the Terran general said, her holographic form flickering slightly. "But they're adapting, covering their tracks, silencing witnesses. We need to strike at the heart of their operation before they can regroup." Zara nodded, her scales a determined orange. "Agreed. Thanks to the information provided by our allies, we've identified their central command hub. It's a hidden space station in the Veil Nebula." Krell pulled up a holographic display of the station. Its defenses are formidable. Energy shields, automated weapon systems, a small fleet of patrol ships. A direct assault would be suicide. "Then we don't assault it," Jack said, a sleek grin spreading across his face. "We infiltrate it, get inside, take control of their systems, and broadcast their crimes to every corner of the galaxy." The Novan empath, her silver eyes glowing softly, spoke up. "It's risky. I sense great danger, but also great potential. This could be the turning point we've been working towards." As the team began to hash out the details of their daring plan, Zira pulled Jack aside. Her scales had taken on a somber grey hue. "Jack, I need to ask you something. Why are you really doing all this? You could have walked away at any point, lived a comfortable life with the bounties you've collected. Why risk everything for this cause?" Jack was quiet for a moment, his usual bravado falling away. "Because a long time ago, I failed to save someone I cared about from slavers. I swore I'd spend the rest of my life making sure no one else had to feel that pain." He met Zira's gaze, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "And because working with you, seeing your dedication to justice despite everything you've lost, it's inspired me to be better, to do more." Zura's scales flushed a warm pink, a color Jack had never seen on her before. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm, "I'm glad we're facing it together." As they rejoined the group, the air was thick with tension and anticipation. They all knew that the upcoming mission could well be their last, but it could also be the key to freeing countless enslaved beings and bringing a corrupt system crashing down. With renewed determination, the unlikely alliance of humans, aliens, and AI began to finalize their plans for the most daring operation in galactic history. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of entire civilizations. As they worked, a sense of cautious hope filled the air. Against all odds, they had come this far. Now it was time to finish what they had started and bring justice to a galaxy that had for too long turned a blind eye to suffering. Revolution and freedom. The Veil Nebula stretched before them, a vast cosmic tapestry of gas and dust illuminated by the light of newborn stars. Somewhere within its swirling depths lay their target, the hidden command center of the galactic slave trade network. Jack Harper stood on the bridge of the Artemis, now fully repaired and upgraded thanks to their growing alliance. Beside him, Zira's scales shimmered with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Around them, their diverse crew of humans and aliens worked in perfect synchronization, a testament to how far they'd come. "All teams report ready," Krell announced from his station, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the nebula's glow. "Stealth systems are engaged." Jack nodded, his face set with determination. "All right, people. This is it. Everything we've fought for comes down to the next few hours. Let's make them count." The Artemis glided silently through the nebula, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it nearly invisible. As they approached the coordinates of the hidden station, a massive structure began to take shape through the cosmic haze. "By the cosmic egg," Krell breathed. "It's enormous." The station was a technological marvel, a city-sized fortress floating in the void. Its surface bristled with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays, while a constant stream of ships came and went from its numerous docking bays. Plotting the infiltration route now, the Arachne hacker collective chimed in through the comm. "We've identified a vulnerable access point in their ventilation system." Zara turned to Jack, her scales a determined purple, just like old times on Nexus Station. Jack grinned, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "Let's hope we don't cut it quite so close this time." As the Artemis maneuvered into position, Jack addressed the crew one last time. "Remember our primary objective: reach the central control room and broadcast the evidence to the galaxy. The Terran General and her team will create a diversion to draw away security. Krell, you're with me and Zira. Everyone else, stick to your assigned tasks and watch each other's backs." With a hiss of decompression, the airlock opened and the infiltration team launched themselves towards the station. Using personal stealth fields, they navigated through the treacherous space between ships and debris, finally reaching their entry point. Once inside, they moved swiftly through the station's maintenance tunnels. The Novan Empath's abilities proved invaluable, allowing them to avoid patrols and choose the safest routes. But as they neared the central control room, alarms began to blare. "They've detected the diversion team," Krell reported, his fingers flying over a portable console. "Security is on high alert." Jack cursed under his breath. "We're out of time. We need to move now." They abandoned stealth for speed, racing through the corridors towards their goal. Armed guards appeared at every turn, but the team's diverse skills and advanced weaponry kept them at bay. Zira's diplomatic training proved surprisingly useful in combat, her knowledge of various alien physiologies allowing her to target weak points with deadly accuracy. Finally, they reached the massive doors of the central control room. As Krell worked to bypass the security, Jack and Zira stood guard, fending off waves of attackers. "Jack," Zira called out between bursts of weapons fire, "if we don't make it out of this, I want you to know." "Tell me when we win," Jack interrupted, a roguish grin on his face despite the dire situation. "It'll give us both something to look forward to." With a triumphant chirp from Krell, the doors slid open. They rushed inside, securing the room and locking down the entrances. The control center was a marvel of technology, with holographic displays showing data streams from across the galaxy. "This is it," Krell said, his voice filled with awe. "The nerve center of their entire operation." As Jack and Zira stood guard, Krell interfaced with the station's systems. His eyes widened as he absorbed the sheer scope of the information at his fingertips. "It's all here. Every transaction, every slave ship route, every bribed official and compromised corporation. With this, we can bring down the entire network." Suddenly, a new voice filled the room, smooth, cultured, and dripping with malice. "I'm afraid I can't allow that." A hidden door slid open, revealing a figure that made Zira's scales pale to a ghostly white. "High Counselor Draz," she whispered. The Lyranian officials stepped into the room, flanked by heavily armed guards. "Did you really think it would be so easy? That we wouldn't be prepared for your little insurrection?" Jack raised his weapon, but Draz merely chuckled. "Oh, please. One wrong move, and this entire station will self-destruct, taking your precious evidence with it. Now, let's discuss terms, shall we?" For a moment, the room was filled with tense silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, Zira began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle, but quickly grew into full-blown, scale-shimmering mirth. Draz's smug expression faltered. "What's so amusing, traitor?" Zira composed herself, fixing Draz with a steely gaze. "You still don't get it, do you? This was never about just the evidence. While you've been focused on us, our allies have been dismantling your network piece by piece. The evidence is already out there, spreading across every communications channel in the galaxy." As if on cue, the room's displays came to life, showing news broadcasts from dozens of worlds. Reports of mass arrests, slave ship interceptions, and corporate raids flooded in from every corner of known space. Draz's face contorted with rage. "Impossible. I'll destroy this station, bury you all." His words were cut short as Jack's fist connected with his jaw, sending the corrupt official sprawling. "That's for Zira," Jack growled, "and for every life you've ruined." In the chaos that followed, Jack, Zira, and Krell managed to subdue Draz and his guards. As they secured the prisoners, the station shook with the sound of multiple ships docking. "Reinforcements have arrived," the Terran general's voice came through their comms. "The station is ours." In the days and weeks that followed, the full impact of their actions reverberated across the galaxy. Governments fell, corporations crumbled, and countless enslaved beings were freed. It wasn't a perfect resolution. There were power vacuums to be filled and systems to be rebuilt, but it was a start. As Jack and Zira stood on the observation deck of the Artemis, watching the Veil Nebula fade into the distance, a comfortable silence fell between them. Finally, Zira spoke, her scales a warm, contented blue. "So, what now? The galaxy's been saved. The great Jack Harper can retire a hero." Jack turned to her, a soft smile on his face. "Retire? Nah. I was thinking more along the lines of new beginnings." He took her hand in his. "There's still a lot of work to do out there. Worlds to rebuild, people to help. Thought maybe you'd like to stick around and help me do it right this time." Zira's scales flushed that warm pink hue Jack had come to adore. "I suppose someone needs to keep you out of trouble," she said, leaning in closer. As their lips met, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. They had faced impossible odds, confronted the darkest aspects of sentient nature, and emerged victorious. But more importantly, they had found in each other a reason to keep fighting, to keep believing in the possibility of a better galaxy for all. The Artemis cruised into open space, carrying not just its crew, but the hopes and dreams of countless beings across the stars. The battle against injustice and oppression was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, the future looked bright. And as Jack and Zira stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew that together they could accomplish anything. The revolution had succeeded, but the real work of building a free and just galaxy was just beginning. It was a task they were more than ready to take on, side by side, human and Lyranian united in their quest for a better tomorrow.